Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 5, EastWatch. Alright, so first thing I want to get out of the way is that I did like this episode. It's gonna sound like I didn't really care for it, and the reason I say that is because it was a good episode for a TV show, but it was by far the worst episode of Game of Thrones this season. I know, a lot of you have started writing your hate comments already. Just calm down, bring it back, let me explain why, and if you still feel like I'm the worst person ever and I don't know anything, then type the damn comment. Alright, but before we get into that, like always, I like to look back on my last review and see what predictions I got right or wrong. And I did pretty fucking good from the last video. I predicted that Jaime and Bronn would float away and somehow get away from Daenerys Targaryen. That's exactly what happened. I predicted that Sam's father would be the person to stand up to Daenerys and ultimately get executed. I think Sam's father is going to refuse to bend the knee and he's going to be the first one torched by the dragon in the next episode. He and Sam's older brother got executed, and I think this could set the stage from Sam being released from his vows at the Night's Watch, because Sam is the last Tarly now. And there are unique circumstances, this being one of them, where somebody can be let out of their Night's Watch vows. So we might see Sam and Gilly ride off into the sunset together. And since I've already started talking about Sam, let's get into his little moment with Gilly in the chamber and him deciding to quit being a maester. So Sam and Gilly are in their room, I guess at their house or whatever, because women aren't allowed where the maesters are. And Gilly's reading a book about a maester that seems really boring because he recorded literally everything, even how many times he took a shit. Then out of nowhere, Gilly's like, what's annulment mean?
What does annulment mean?
And she's like, well, in this book that I randomly am reading through, it turns out that this guy gave an annulment to a prince named Rhaegar, or is it Rhaegar Targaryen? And then he remarried her secretly in Dorne. And if you're not the type to pay attention to these type of things, basically what happened was Gilly discovered that Jon Snow was actually a true-born Targaryen. We were originally told that Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna, and that's what started Robert's rebellion, which put Robert Baratheon on the throne. However, we found out in season 6 that Jon Snow was actually the child of Rhaegar and Lyanna. And the question that some people have been wondering is if we're gonna get clarification on whether or not Jon is just a southern bastard or a true-born Targaryen. Turns out he's a true-born Targaryen, and he actually has a better claim to the Iron Throne than Daenerys Targaryen. Rhaegar was Daenerys' eldest brother, the prince. The throne should have passed to him and then his children. Since he's dead and his first two sons are dead, Jon has the claim to the throne. So that was revealed to the audience, and a lot of people are excited about it. I really didn't care for how they revealed it, because it was revealed to the audience, but like the characters don't know what it means yet. And then Sam decides to leave the Citadel because he doesn't want to read about the stories of greater men anymore. And he takes a bunch of more important books that he thinks will lead to him figuring out how to beat the White Walkers. There was a scene that preceded this where the Maesters kind of shut down his idea of all the Maesters saying that they believe in the White Walker threat, and that pissed him off and led him to this. But can you just reveal it to Jon that he's a true-born Targaryen and he's actually Ned Stark's nephew, not his son? Honestly, this reeks of fan service, and one of my pet peeves in all media is how much fan service is just put in there. Fan service is basically fluff. It's there for the audience, but it has no impact on the story. It told the audience Jon's lineage, but it didn't inform any of the characters, so it won't change anything in the story. Speaking of fan service, let's talk about Gendry. Don't get me wrong, I really like the way they brought Gendry back into the story. I mean, Tyrion trying to get Cersei on his side to fight the dead, totally fucking stupid. But I like the fact that Davos went looking for him because he sent him away all those years, and Gendry told Davos that he's from Flea Bottom. So Davos finds him, he's like, I told you it would be safest in King's Landing. And he's like, yeah, you're totally right. And Gendry's working as a smith, arming the Lannisters. He's a very talented blacksmith, so that makes sense. And then Davos is like, alright, it's time for us to go. And Gendry's like, okay. But then Gendry picks up a hammer. Now Gendry's a blacksmith, and he's used to working with a hammer, so it makes sense that his weapon would be a hammer in universe. But it's half fan service because Robert Baratheon used to use a hammer. It turns into full fan service when Gendry meets Jon Snow. Now, I like the fact that Gendry tells him he's Robert Baratheon's bastard, and we don't have to mess around with that manufactured drama of this mystery person being with Jon Snow.
This is Prince Gendry, Your Grace. I'm Robert Baratheon's son, bastard son.
It makes sense for him to do that for two reasons. One, Ned Stark was a noble man, and he did come to visit him, and he was very kind to him. And two, he spent a lot of time with Arya Stark, and him and Arya were really good friends, so every Stark that Gendry met, he felt like he could trust them. What was total fan service though, is when they started like jabbing each other with insults.
You're a lot leaner. You're a lot shorter.
Do you guys remember season 1, episode 1, where Robert Baratheon went to Winterfell and he sees Ned for the first time in like 10 years, maybe 15 years? I'm not exactly sure. He goes up to Ned and the first thing he said to him was, "You're getting fat." And then Ned gives him kind of a look because he's like, "Dude, you're fucking fat." And then they start laughing. And the point of that scene was to show that these guys were really good friends back in the day, and they still see each other as equals. Kings are often portrayed in stories as above their subjects, but this little moment lets us know in the very first episode that Ned and him are really good friends. So the purpose of them jabbing at each other was character building. Gendry and Jon have no such relationship, and their back and forth little jabs didn't even make sense. Like, Gendry actually jabbed Jon, pointing out he's not as tall as Ned Stark. Jon, however, said, "You're not as fat as your father," and that's not an insult. And the entire point of the scene is like, oh, we know Ned and Robert were friends, so their kids are friends. Yay! Complete fan service. As predicted, Tyrion and Varys are really worried about Daenerys acting more and more like the Mad King. She burned men alive rather than take them prisoner, which is exactly what the Mad King would do. And Varys is very much like, Tyrion, you gotta get her under control so she doesn't become the Mad Queen. We also get the reunion I said we would get between Ser Jorah and Daenerys Targaryen. Really nice reunion. I really like the scene. I really like Ser Jorah as a character, and basically all of the Mormonts have been good throughout the series. After their nice reunion, we get a scene where Daenerys seems to be admiring Jon Snow's bravery. Jon Snow decides that he's gonna go north and retrieve one of the whites to bring to Cersei, which is a completely stupid fucking plan, by the way, but it does show Daenerys growing quite fond of Jon Snow. Jon even had a moment with the dragon, which is like half fan service, half character building, because Jon's a Targaryen and the dragons are supposed to have a connection with the Targaryens. So the dragon being warm to Jon is like, oh my god, he's a true Targaryen. But also it makes Daenerys like pause and think there's something special about him, which does help build the story going forward. So it's like 25% fan service, 75% good scene. Jon and Mormont decide to head north. They team up with the Brotherhood. We realize that everybody in this group fucking hates each other and they have legitimate reasons to hate each other. And that's lovely. Although it did kind of start to feel like The Hateful Eight or some Tarantino movie, where all these badass characters that we like are all together in the same place going on a mission. So although I liked seeing those characters together, I was a little like meh on how they got together and then just decided to work with each other. But now I want to talk about my favorite fucking parts of the show. Alright, so if you guys have been following my reviews, you know I believe that Daenerys will eventually become the Mad Queen. But the person I root for to sit on the Iron Throne is Littlefinger. Lord Baelish is one of the best fucking players at the Game of Thrones. He's lowborn, he's risen up to a lordship, and he consistently outmaneuvers the other players. He's low-key become one of the most powerful people in all of Westeros. House divided cannot stand. Littlefinger is the master at dividing a house. He notices that some of the Northern Lords are regretting naming Jon Snow King of the North and not choosing Sansa Stark as the leader. Which, by the way, we got a lot of good scenes for Sansa too, showing that she learned how to play the political game a lot better than anybody else in her family, because she's listening to the other Northern Lords and trying to make sure that if something does happen to Jon, that they do choose her as her leader. So she's positioning herself to be the person that they turn to when they want to shift in power. Of course, Arya doesn't like this. She's more true Stark in that way than Sansa, and she notices that Sansa is playing the game. So Littlefinger, knowing that there's a divide between Sansa and Arya, decides to drive a wedge into it and make it deeper. He realizes that Arya is following him, so what he does is he has the Lord sneak around and deliver him the message that Sansa was forced to write when Ned was originally taken prisoner for treason. In the letter, Sansa says Ned is a traitor, and that Robb should come to King's Landing and bend the knee to Joffrey. Arya's used to being way smarter than her foes, so she doesn't even realize she's being played. If Sansa and Lord Baelish really didn't want that to be seen, what they would have done was burn it as soon as they got it. Instead, he hid it in a place where she could find it. So yeah, I love Littlefinger outsmarting Arya. He's been good throughout the series at outsmarting people who would otherwise be considered rather intelligent. Arya's never gone up against somebody this intellectually capable. In the next episode, I predict the divide widening. Maybe Arya confronts Sansa with the letter. Maybe she brings it to the Lords to try and split their ranks and not get them to back Sansa. I don't think she's just going to hang on to it with the intention of showing it to Jon. I think this will be a major issue in the next episode. And although I love Lord Baelish, he's kind of playing with fire here. He doesn't know is that Arya has the Faceless powers. So I do see a potential scenario in the next episode where Arya poses as somebody and Peter Baelish reveals something to her that he shouldn't have, and Arya ends up killing him. This would of course cost Sansa and Jon by extension the Knights of the Vale, and it would significantly weaken the North. I really hope Lord Baelish doesn't bite it in the next episode, but he's playing with fire. That's really going to be it for my predictions. They didn't show us a lot in the trailer that I could kind of glom onto and make something out of. Basically, the promo just showed Jon and the Hateful Eight north of the Wall. Maybe the dude who's been resurrected a bunch of times will point out that Jon was resurrected and Ser Jorah will overhear it and he'll tell Daenerys when they get back. There's definitely a possibility that one of the people with them gets killed and Jon brings that person to King's Landing as the White to show to Cersei. Also, if the Hound goes with Jon to King's Landing, we might see a fight between the Hound and the Mountain because they have unfinished business. That being said, the chances are Jon will remain north of the Wall throughout the whole episode, so any of those predictions would be episode 7 predictions, not episode 6 predictions. And I think I'm going to leave it there. That's all I really have for you guys today. If you like this video, then please show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, leave a comment below to join the discussion. This has been my review of Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 5. Till next time.